Hey everybody, this is Bob, Trade Genius. Got my good friend Phil here. We have a great one for you today. Bitcoin ETFs have now been officially sanctioned by the SEC. And what's next for Bitcoin? Stay tuned.
Trade Genius.
Hey everybody, it's Bob with Trade Genius. Hey, it is holiday season and our holiday specials are running right now. Use promo code HOLIDAY. You already blew it. You missed the Black Friday specials, but this is your second chance to take advantage of some of the best pricing that we do for the year. Check us out, tradelikeagenius.com, tradegenius.co, tradegeniusacademy.com. All roads lead to Trade Genius. Check us out. Incredible deals. Thanks for listening. Okay, Phil, we've been telling people this is so textbook trading 101. It still amazes me that people will still argue about with you. You know, it's basically buy the rumor, sell the fact. And I'm going to throw this over to you. We had the rumor of the ETF. There was front running. They front ran it.
Sure.
And we're starting to get our pullback. And I want to throw it to you, kind of explain to people. We also caught the trade, by the way. We bought BITI yesterday. We're still in that trade. It's up over 10%. And, you can trade Bitcoin both ways now. It's going to become a really fun market. But with that, Phil, I'm going to throw it to you because you're the expert on this.
All right, let's just dive into the charts. And one thing I will point out to you guys is that we're going to probably see a lot of volatility over the next few trading days, maybe in the next couple of weeks, because what's happening now, we have these 11 ETFs, all with severely discounted fees. Why that matters is because GBTC, which has been kind of the de facto ETF for people with brokerage accounts that need to buy shares that are exposed to a BTC. That's what you had. You had GBTC. Wasn't truly an ETF, it was a closed-end fund. Institutional players had to lock up their BTC purchases in the fund. And so it created some interesting dynamics, whereas you could have, a discount to the actual asset value, or what they call a negative NAV. And that meant that there was a discount. It got as high as, I think, 50%, Bob, which was extremely low. And you're stuck in that. So what then is now happening is it's like, well, I don't have to pay these exorbitant GBTC fees because their fees have not come down. So what we might see is a large exodus from GBTC now over to these ETFs. Now, GBTC successfully got approval for a conversion to ETF, so they're changing their structure. These guys are going to be moving now out of that, going into these lower cost ETFs, such as the ones from BlackRock or ARK Investments. So you're going to have these big redemptions, meaning that GBTC is going to have to sell spot Bitcoin, but you're also going to have spot Bitcoin being bought on the other side of things, because these guys now are going to have to buy Bitcoin to back the shares that are being purchased for these ETFs on the side of BlackRock and ARK. So I think you're going to have a lot of volatility on forced liquidation and forced buying. Could be a very whipsaw market. And I think ultimately it's changing hands. And then over time, once we're done with that, it starts to roll over. And the reason why it would roll over is because, well, for one thing, we've gone up and we've hit the 618. And that's what this red area is on the chart here. This is the 618, basically the 50% to the 618 fib retracement. And that's a big zone, especially when you're dealing with daily and weekly timeframes. And that's from the all-time high to the cycle lows here below 16,000. And so we've come up to that. Now we're due for a correction. We've had a couple of 20+% corrections on the way up from the lows. We basically launched from October mostly on the hype that we're getting an ETF or ETFs, and we got 11 of them. And so we've run right up into it. And we said prior videos, and we've said that this is a classic sell the news move. So yesterday people were like, well, we didn't sell because we just made a new high, right? We got up to like 49 and change. But then today, we're dumping back down. We've probed below 44K. So, $5,000+ pullback, which is pretty significant even for Bitcoin. Now, what I think is going to happen is, Bob, we're still going to have a lot of volatility. I think there's a decent chance that the high has been put in for Bitcoin. Bitcoin will often challenge the highs that were just put in. So I wouldn't be surprised, even though we're trading down below 44,000 today, that we might see a push back higher up towards 47, maybe 48K. But ultimately, I think we have a really good candidate for a high for this move now. And like I said, normally pre-halving, you get that move up into the 50 to 618% fib retracement zone. You can go back into various halving cycles and various cycle highs and see that that's the case. Sometimes we don't get it more than 50% or just under it, and sometimes sometimes we get into this little area, and I think 2019 we even poked above it slightly and then pulled back on that move. So if we go back down to like the really obvious support area, which is going to be down between 31 and 32K, that's going to give us about 36% pullback. And I think that is totally reasonable for this move and for Bitcoin. Now, it'll probably take a recession to get back below that. And that's the big question mark. Are we going to get a recession? Is this going to be the case for the economy and for Bitcoin? And people will argue, well, Bitcoin's not the economy. Well, I would argue that it's still, until proven otherwise, still a risk on asset. And even if it's got the role of gold, let's see, it does the gold thing, same behavior as gold ETF. After the ETF was approved in America for gold chopped around for a little while in a range. The situation there on the macro is different. We're coming out of the .com bust, getting our traction for a new bull run. That's not the case here. So the macro is a little different. Although I do think once this is out of the way and we get past all of this potential recession or the recession, then we'll have a great run 2025, 2026, 2020, and off into the end of the decade, I believe. And I think you're going to see Bitcoin hit some really crazy valuations. And then you also have supply shock that is eventually going to be a thing. It's not here yet. We still have over a couple million BTC floating on the exchanges. You got to monitor exchange supply. At Trade Genius, that's what we do. We monitor it. If there's a significant drop in that, we let everybody know, because at that point, a supply shock is coming. And I think you're going to see basically, it's just going to come down to demand. And that's the other thing too, Bob. People thought this ETF approval would magically uncork demand for Bitcoin. And you and I had many discussions, and we've discussed it in the room, that, ultimately this comes down to investor demand. And I would say the biggest pile of capital is with the baby boomers, right? Now, we know the new generation is going to be much more open to Bitcoin. The baby boomers, I would say a large percentage of that population doesn't understand Bitcoin or doesn't get it or is just happy with traditional investments because they're kind of already set. So my thought was, why all of a sudden would an ETF approval change all that? Granted, BlackRock instills more confidence for people that are not trusting this new asset class. I get that. But I think it's going to take time. And I think over time it will happen. But I think it's going to take time for this demand to evolve until we, to a point where we do get supply shock. I think that ultimately that's going to happen. But I don't think it's going to be overnight. And I think we've probably rung the bell here. And I think over time we're going to see that this was a sell the news event.
Yeah, Phil, the other thing I'll say about that is if it's not, if it's not in your off-market wallet, it's not yours. And, my imagination can run wild where BlackRock can have the ETF being seized by the government because they do some, like they did with gold. I think the millennials on down won't trust the ETFs. The boomers might trust the ETFs until they get a situation where you get an executive order that says Bitcoin needs to be seized in the United States. And the only easy place to seize it is the ones that are sitting with all the institutions that have these ETFs out there. So, I can paint many scenarios. A couple of things I want to make too, because it's important, is that, and then I have a question for you, is that our next event is going to be the halving, which is going to probably affect people. But the one after that's more important to me as a trader is that there will be options associated with some of these ETFs. Okay. And when options get involved, the futures markets get involved. And when the futures market gets involved, then things can get really interesting. Now, I think ultimately that's going to be positive for Bitcoin because the supply isn't there for them to manipulate. Like they can always force gold miners to cough up supply because they're constantly creating it. You don't have that luxury with Bitcoin. But I think short term, it's going to create such a volatile environment that, and it might be just too volatile for a lot of people. Now, having said all that, this is a godsend because now we have BITI. We're going to have a long Bitcoin, and we're going to be able to do some really nice trading with it. But Coinbase, are their fees in line with this new environment, or are they going to be trying to just live on as a custodian or other altcoins? I'm curious your take on that.
Yeah, I think, if you're looking strictly at a pure BTC play, there's competition there. Obviously, they're trading, they're an exchange, so there's trading going on in various different alts. That's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because Gensler came out again, I think it was today or this morning, and said, look, basically almost every other altcoin out there is a security as we define it. So does that mean that there's going to be further reduction in what's offered by Coinbase in the US? Or do we find some way where maybe we do futures contracts that are based on the price of these altcoins that are traded offshore, but futures contracts are, kind of a convenient loophole. And then we see more perpetual futures based trading like we saw with FTX and things like that. And what's really, that's more of the popular trading vehicle for alts overseas. I don't know. So it's, Coinbase is not a slam dunk. I think it's got some headwinds and there's some challenges, and the regulatory environment, I think, is going to play a big part in that, Bob. So, in terms of Bitcoin trading fees, they might have to come down for Coinbase to compete with some of this stuff, if we're just strictly talking Bitcoin. But again, they have other offerings. So I think there's a little bit of a moat there. But again, that's contingent on the regulatory environment. If Gensler goes, scorched earth and there's only a handful of alts that are not securities.
Wow, guys, it's going to be a fun ride for us on Bitcoin, but you're going to go down before we go up. We've been warning you guys on that. So don't fret, trade it and enjoy the two-way market here until we get to 2025. I think it's going to be 2024 is going to be rough on all assets, even the ones I love. With that, Phil, you guys have a great rest of the weekend. We'll catch you guys on Tuesday. We're not going to do a video. Sunday, we never do. And Monday is Martin Luther King Day, and we're not going to do a video that day either. So enjoy the long weekend. And next week is going to prove to be a wild week. With OPEX coming and then a new financial regime, I think, for the next couple months. Remember, hit like, hit subscribe. Check out our trading system that we have. I think you'll like it. We beautifully caught this BIT move. We've been killing it on uranium. There's trades coming up every day. The system's really good. It's really consistent, and I think you'll like it. There's no craziness to it, and you can trade pretty much every asset with it that's trading on TradingView. So have a good one, guys. Phil, thank you as always. And we'll see you guys soon.
Take care.
Trade Genius.